Hey there, you guys. Welcome back. Today we are going to take some cuttings of boxwood. Boxwood is one of those things that are quite beautiful. Many times they're a piece of the bones of the garden. People make hedges out of them. I'm sure you know what boxwoods are, and you've seen them here and there as hedging, just as round balls, maybe as a topiary. They're absolutely beautiful, and they can get expensive if you're buying a lot, especially if you're doing hedging. So why not take cuttings of the ones that you already have and increase your stock that way? It'll take a few years, but you'll save a lot of money. So I'm going to take some cuttings from these boxwoods. I'm not sure what type of boxwood these are, but they're one of my favorite varieties. I love how they have a more open habit, and the leaves are a little bit bigger and they're a little bit glossier. We're going to come in, you'll see a little bit closer in a second what they look like. We're going to show you, I'll show you what to look for where you're cutting from. Best time of year to take cuttings for boxwoods is late spring, early summer. So what am I right now? We're July 4th. So yeah, you're not going to see this July 4th, but that is what day it is today. So it's perfect timing. So these, you want to look for a semi-ripe cutting or a semi-hardwood cutting, just where the new growth starts to get a little bit older, and has hardened off a wee bit, but you don't want an old hardwood cutting, and you also don't want a softwood cutting. So we'll get into that in a second. You're going to want to get either a nice clean pruner, fresh clean pruner, clean it with some rubbing alcohol or with fire or something, because you don't want to get an infection in the cutting, or get yourself a pruning knife or a cutting knife. Or what is this, a grafting knife? I don't know. They've got so many terms. I sterilized this one with rubbing alcohol before the video. I don't want to cut myself, so I'll put that away. And you're also going to want a rooting hormone. Any type will do, but if you have a choice, I would use a semi-hardwood rooting hormone. There are usually 3 different types. There's usually a softwood cutting, rooting hormone, a semi-hardwood, and a hardwood cutting. I believe the difference is the softwood cuttings are more, or there's less active ingredient in it. It's a little bit less potent. Medium is the semi-hardwood cutting. There's a little bit more active ingredient, and then the hardwood cutting needs a little bit more oomph, so you go with the hardwood cutting because it's harder to grow some roots. It might take a little longer, so you want a little bit more power behind you. So know what type of cutting you're taking, yeah, rooting hormone is very helpful when it comes to taking cuttings of boxwoods. So let's get in. We'll take a few cuttings. I'm using a peat-based soil with lots of perlite. If you have horticultural sand, add some sand to the mix. Some sharp sand, and that will also help. I don't have any sharp sand, so I'm just using my my Pro Mix high porosity mix. Seed starting mix should be fine. You want to keep these moist until they root, so you're going to need to keep them moist for probably 3 or 4 months. If you take these cuttings a little bit later in the season and they haven't rooted, you might have to keep them inside in a cool spot over winter, or if you have an unheated front porch or something like that. They don't have to be too far above freezing, but they shouldn't freeze until they get their roots established. So anyway, let's get into it. We'll talk more about it a little bit later. We just want to see some stuff happen. Okay, so when we're looking in here, hopefully you're able to see. I'm just going to cut this whole branch off. Right now is a great time to take cuttings because the plant needs to be trimmed anyway at this time of the year. Between now and August is the best time to prune them. So we're actually shaping the plant while we're taking these cuttings. So it's a great way to increase your population. You're doing it anyway. So we'll just pop these into some soil. So when I look at this tip of the leaf is going to be the softwood cutting. You don't want it to be too short. This back here is where it's going to be hardened off a little bit more. Generally, you see it go from green to maybe a slighter brown and then maybe a gray. Depending on the bush, you'll see the contrast, the way that it changes. So anywhere within this zone here is considered a semi-hardwood cutting. I would say that this is probably the best place to go. So we can cut these bits off later on. I'm going to do it right here in front of you, just as a demonstration for now, and then you'll end up taking the leaves off. I'm not going to do all of it right now because we want to plunge it into soil as soon as possible after we take the leaves off. So let's go ahead and we're going to cut a bunch of branches off and prepare these and then pot them up. So again, I'm going to go in, I'm just going to cut it down. I'm not going to show you all of these. Here's a good example right here of this one. See how it goes from a more green, and then this is semi-hardwood cutting right here where it starts to go more brown. So that's where you want some of your cuts to be. Hopefully that comes into focus, and hopefully it makes sense to you. And there's going to be a lot that we're going to cut, so you'll get some good ones, some not so good ones. I'm going to probably put about 5 cuttings in each pot. So I'm going to cut a bunch from here. I'm randomly cutting these branches off, but I should be shaping my plant. I shouldn't just be cutting them willy-nilly like I'm doing. So anyway, we'll come back and we'll start the potting up process. Okay, so let's get into it. This one here is easy. I guess this is one that I started with. It goes from green down to changing color to a nice brown. So this is a nice semi-hardwood cutting. If you have a lot of extra leaves, you want these cuttings to be 4 to 6 inches tall. Don't hesitate to cut off the very tip to conserve some energy. Sometimes the tip might just end up wilting. And this is also going to promote branching down at the nodes here. So we've exposed the branch here. We took off some lower leaves, so we've got a couple of inches of little nodes that are fresh. We're going to take the rooting hormone here. We're going to dip it in there. Now this is the trick. You don't want to put it in the soil just like this. Less is not, more is not better. You want to tap it off as much as will come off as possible. Just gently tap it. That is perfect. Too much rooting hormone, and then we're just poking it into the soil, and that is a cutting that's done. This one we'll take apart. So with rooting hormone, if you put too much on, it can actually have the opposite effect, where it'll just produce a large callus and roots can't develop. So you want to just err on the side of caution, tap off as much as you can, and just leave what's remaining. I'm going to use my knife to cut this one off. This one might be able to be used as a cutting as well. So just removing some of the lower leaves. If it's taller than 4 inches or 6 inches, you can cut the tip off. I'm also using a pot that has a little greenhouse on it, which is really convenient. And if it's too tall, the little greenhouse won't fit on. So that's also a method to my madness. So this one, we've cleaned it up. Just gonna put my cutting in the little rooting hormone bottle. Again, that's too much. We're gonna tap it off. A bottle of rooting hormone goes a long way. So there we go. If you want to, tap it off more. We're gonna put 3 or 4 or 5 cuttings in a pot. Whatever feels right, whatever is not too crowded. You want to have a few cuttings in each pot because not all of them are going to take. It's going to take, like I said, about 3 months for them to start developing roots. And once they get roots, you can put them outside again as long as it's still frost-free outside. And they will survive. If you're doing this later in the season, you might have to keep them in the house in a cool-ish spot that gets good light. They might be dormant, but they still need some sun. All right, so we'll cut these side branches off. They're too tiny, and I'm going to cut this back. This is going to be a beautiful cutting. It's going to be a nice dense bush. Here we go. Sometimes too much leaves is not a good thing, so even if you cut these back, you want the plant to focus on trying to produce roots and not trying to support all of its leaf growth. So this is probably a better size cutting right here. Again, we're going to put it in the rooting hormone. And not all of these are going to sprout, like I said. That's why we're doing a bunch. And like I was saying earlier, it's going to take about 3 years for these plants to be a really nice size. So keep that in mind. You're not going to have a full garden in next year. They're going to stay small, but they will grow quickly. That's a beautiful little cutting as well. Because we cut off the tip, it's going to start branching once it starts to develop its roots. There we go. Tap it off. Looking beautiful. So I'm going to go on, I'm going to finish the rest of these, and then we'll water these in. So stay tuned. Okay, so I think this is going to be my last cutting here. This is a perfect little cutting. You want to make sure that it's got some of the semi-hardwood bottom. I've cut off the tip. There's only 4 leaves on here. This is perfect because if you leave too many leaves on, the plant tries to put in the energy to hold on to the leaves, and then it doesn't really produce the roots. So you want to take away a bunch of the leaves. You don't have to take away everything, but leaving 4 leaves is lovely. It's a perfect little 4 or 5 inch cutting. I've tapped off the rooting hormone, and I'm just going to pop it in one of these pots. I've got a few more here. Might as well do a couple more. This one here, I'm going to remove the bottom couple of leaves like that, and then I'm going to cut it back like this. We got 4 little leaves. It's going to produce growth here and here, so it's going to be a lovely little cutting. You don't want to make them too big. You don't want to make them too bushy if you can help it. Experiment with it, see what grows best for you. So this will be my last one. I'll clean up my mess here, and then we'll come back and we'll water these in, and I'll give you a little bit more information. Okay, here we are. We've got our little pots with 3 to 5 cuttings, maybe 6 cuttings in each pot. I'm going to water them in. You want to keep these evenly moist for the duration of their rooting. You don't want to keep them soggy, so you don't want to have them sitting in a tray of water, but you want to keep them evenly moist. You want to put them in a well-lit spot, but no direct sun. Direct sun will make them wilt and die. So you want to basically put them in a shady spot outside, or if you're growing them inside, in a well-lit, maybe even a southern exposure, but back from the window a bit, and wait it out. Monitor these little guys, well, daily, but ideally as they start to dry, you want to give them a drink. I'll sit them in a tray of water from time to time and then empty the tray. Sounds like there's construction happening in the front yard. These are really adorable little greenhouse pots that I found on Amazon. If I can find it, I'll put the link in the description down below, because I think that they're really handy. They just clip in. And so yeah, now it's the waiting game. These little greenhouse pots will be fantastic. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it helpful. Please, in the comment section down below, if you try doing this, let me know how your success is. I'm sure the majority of these will sprout for you. Yeah, they're pretty fun to grow, and you'll save a lot of money. Anyway, until next time, you guys, happy growing!